Hello and welcome. Today I am introducing the Circular Aviation ACSM Evaluation Loop or C-AAEL. This framework was developed specifically for aviation industry leaders, civil aviation authorities or CAAs, and safety directors. Evaluating advocacy, communication, and social mobilization or ACSM initiatives in global aviation requires a completely different approach than standard campaigns. Over the next few minutes, we will explore why traditional evaluation falls short in our industry and how this new nonlinear framework operates. To understand why we need a new framework, we must have to look at the environment we operate in. Aviation advocacy operates within an intricate, highly regulated global network. Our industry is defined by multi-jurisdictional frameworks where international legal borders constantly shift. Furthermore, our workforce of flight attendants and flight deck crew is highly mobile, operating transiently across multiple time zones. Ultimately, systemic safety in this environment relies almost entirely on frontline dependency, meaning rapid, accurate reporting from distributed crew on the ground. Because of this complexity, linear evaluation models fracture. Traditional monitoring and evaluation assumes that campaigns operate in bounded communities with very predictable cause and effect chains, moving neatly from inputs to activities to outputs and eventually to impact. But the reality in aviation is very different. A single viral post from a cabin crew union could spark a sudden policy shift by a CAA, or a frontline tip might reshape international law enforcement years later. Static end of project models simply cannot measure this dynamic long-term ripples. This brings us to the necessity shift from static measurement to continuous systemic evaluation. Looking at the evaluation evolution matrix, we move from a linear logic flow to a continuous 360-degree circular loop. Instead of treating audiences as a single homogeneous group, C-AAEL recognizes multi-tiered flow across decision makers, influencers, and frontline staff. Most importantly, we move away from a static impact end state. In our framework, we achieve eternal return, where outcomes dynamically feed back into our advocacy strategy and frontline alertness. Here is the core architecture of the Circular Aviation ACSM evaluation loop. It consists of four interconnected nodes: the audience behavior progression ring, the complex adaptive feedback ring, the triangulated multi-method engine, and the continuous impact loop. The central philosophy here is that evaluation does not terminate at impact. Instead, real-world data dynamically loops back to constantly refine organizational learning and aviation policy. Let's break down Node 1, which leverages multi-directional audience progression. Grounded in Julia Kaufman's advocacy strategy framework, we evaluate three tiers: the outer ring of frontline cabin crew, the middle ring of union influencers, and the center ring of decision makers like CAAs and airline executives. The progression is multidirectional. For example, when frontline crew take action, like submitting real-time tip reports, it creates union momentum. This influencer will then pressure regulators to mandate new training protocols. Node 2 maps this complex adaptive feedback across our global networks. Grounded in complexity theory, we track how flight crew act as small world bridges, transmitting advocacy messages globally. We measure bottom-up emergence, where an operational tip travels upward and downward casualty, where a Regulatory body sends update standard operating procedures back down the chain. We also measure eternal return, how digital instructional materials persist and re-emerge to educate new crew years after a campaign launches. To capture these behavioral nuances, Node 3 triangulates our evaluation methods. Based on US 8 and PATH guidelines, we lock qualitative and quantitative metrics together. On the qualitative side, we conduct bellwether interviews with safety directors and run focus groups with cabin crew. On the quantitative side, we pull training analytics, evaluate knowledge, attitudes, and practices through KAP surveys, and analyze tip line logs for volume and accuracy. By combining these, we capture the nonlinear evaluation reality. Node 4 firmly rejects the idea of static impact in favor of a continuous learning loop. Evaluation must rigidly distinguish between our activity outputs, the resulting behavior outcomes, and the ultimate long-term systemic impact. Rather than simply writing an evaluation report and achieving it when long-term impact is achieved, Node 4 feeds verified outcomes directly back into Node 1. This continuously refines messaging, updates operation or operating procedures, and improves training for new recruits. To put this into practice, we use the ACSM flight deck dashboard, an operational blueprint for airline evaluation. It maps out exactly how to measure success. For decision makers, we track regulatory policy will by tracking the number of CAAs mandating policy. For influencers, we evaluate coalition growth by analyzing network co-sponsorships. And for the frontline and system levels, we track everything from the percentage improvement in spotting indicators to the ultimate metric of verified destination interceptions. To prove how this model works in the real world, we can apply it to the International Air Transport Association's hashtag Eyes Open campaign. The context is severe. Human trafficking utilizes global commercial aviation networks, and the goal of the Eyes Open is to transform frontline flight crew into the ultimate line of defense. The challenge for evaluators is figuring out how to measure the systemic impact of the campaign when success requires massive coordination across crew, unions, executives, and international law enforcement. By tracing hashtag Eyes Open through our loop, the evaluation becomes clear. In step 1, pre and post analytics measure how crew awareness converts into actionable law enforcement tips. In step 2, network analysis shows how union co-branding accelerates peer-to-peer reporting across global bases. In step 3, we triangulate our findings by locking learning management system completion rates together with safety director interviews. Finally, in step 4, verified interceptions are recorded, and these critical case studies loop right back into the system to update training scenarios for the next generation of recruits. To conclude, aviation safety is a continuous orbit, not a final destination. So to properly evaluate advocacy in this space, we must ditch the straight line and adopt a resilient closed-loop architecture built for complex networks. We must capture the ripple effect of multi-directional feedback, and we must sustain our impact by ensuring the eternal return of operational readiness. By feeding real-world data back into the hands of our flight crew, we don't just measure change, we continuously improve it. Thank you very much for your time. This is Sal. Mabuhay.